Hi, good morning. My name is Jason Francois. I'm the applications engineer for the North Central region. I handle Minnesota, Illinois, and Wisconsin, thus the accent. We're going to be going through designing for Q-SYS VisionSuite. We're going to talk about ACPR. We're going to talk about um, Seer Vision as well. So hang on tight, folks. Everybody see my screen okay, Dan? Okay, excellent. So designing for Q-SYS VisionSuite. VisionSuite is, we're going to have an overview of it. We're going to go through the NC camera's native features, etc. You know, what you need a license for, what you don't need a license for, what's just baked into the Q-SYS Designer software. So a real quick overview on what VisionSuite is. So Q-SYS VisionSuite is the culmination of all of our intelligent video products up to this point. You've got the NC series cameras. You've got our ACPR plugin, the Seer Vision AI accelerators. So all those are all part of the whole Q-SYS ecosystem, and they're part of our intelligent videos uh, applications, and so we call them our Vision Suite. I joke because it's vision, because it's site-based, and it's sweet because it's pretty sweet. So, excuse me, I'm a little froggy, got a little bit of a travel cold today. So we're going to start looking at the NC series native features. So the features just within our cameras, the NC series cameras, you don't have to have any additional licensing. There's no plugins involved in this. It's just what's contained within the cameras. We've got three NC series cameras, the NC110, the NC1280, and the NC20x60. All of those start off with, how far can the unit zoom in? What's the zoom ratio on it? And the second digit is when it is fully zoomed out, what is the degree, the angle of view that we're getting. So with the 1280, you've got a 12 times zoom, 80-degree field of view. NC2060, you've got a 20 times zoom, 60-degree field of view. And with the NC110, the NC110 is a little different. It is a fixed frame EPTZ, so it's got a 110-degree field of view, but it does electronic zoom. So there's no manual zoom or no mechanical zoom on this. All the cameras have a 4K image sensor, so we're delivering up to a 1080p video stream to your UC client. Your UC client is going to kind of negotiate that speed. So there's the USB connections in there, the speed of your calls in there and stuff. That's all negotiated to figure out, will you get that full 1080p out of your UC platform. All three Q-SYS series cameras, NC series cameras, are compatible with the ACPR plugin, as well as Seer Vision AI camera tracking. And we all now, with with no license required, have the ability to auto frame. So auto frame takes what the camera sees, the camera's field of view, analyzes, are there faces within that field of view? We're not doing any kind of facial recognition. We're not saving any user biometrics to the system. We're just saying, mathematically, here's the ratio that denotes what a face is. Here's an oval, here's identifiers for eyes, ears, etc. So that means when we're looking at a 2D field of view, we're not able to discern between what may be wall art and somebody actually sitting in the room. So that's just something to be aware of. All the auto framing cameras that are on the market kind of have the same feature, where it's just looking mathematically at the ratio between eyes and that oval that is your head, and saying, yep, here's a couple people that have moved in or out of my camera's field of view. Now I'm going to adjust to make sure that they are framed appropriately. Those auto framing features are all within the properties of each one of the Q-SYS cameras, NC series cameras, as you bring them into Q-SYS Design. Auto framing adjustments, whether or not it's enabled, whether or not we want to count the number of faces in the room, that is a really cool feature. And then when you're tuning the system, do you want to use the outline faces feature so that you can make sure that your cameras are aimed appropriately? When you look on our website, we've got a distance calculator. What's the measurement you're looking to achieve with those cameras, and so which one is going to be appropriate for your application. Typically, when we're looking at, just shooting from the hip, NC 110 is great for smaller rooms, about 15 degrees from, or excuse me, 15 feet from the farthest person within the room to the camera. NC 1280 and then NC 2060, we kind of bump up from there. So let's talk now about ACPR, Automatic Camera Preset Recall. What is it? What are the functions? How is that different from camera tracking? When we talk to our customers about their needs and their requirements for these rooms, for these video conferencing suites, they oftentimes say, I want to have camera tracking. All right, so let's get into the weeds a little bit about what the customer thinks that camera tracking is. For some of them, camera tracking is just that auto framing that we had already talked about. For others, camera tracking is just making sure that everybody in the room is included in the meeting. So we're moving between presets. And for those more advanced users, now we've got a set presentation area at the front of the room, and we can automatically pan, tilt, and zoom according to where our presenter is moving in the room. So one is ACPR / audience-based switching, automatic camera preset recall, using those fixed predetermined camera positions, and we're recalling of a preset based on whether either the audio angle or the direct audio of a person speaking corresponds to a preset that we've configured ahead of time. Whereas camera tracking is AI looking at the camera's field of view. Is there a person within that field of view? And automatically tracking them without any preset information. Although we can add to further refine and make that work a little more fantastic. So in this case, we've got a TCC2, Sennheiser ceiling microphone, detecting audio coming from one of the participants in our meeting. So the camera says, yes, I have a preset that corresponds to that area of the room. I'm going to change to that preset. Audio coordinates were sent from the Sennheiser TCC2 to the Q-SYS core. Those corresponded to a preset that was recalled. All of this is based on Lewis scripting. So what that means is anybody could have written this plugin. It is at its heart just a Lewis script that we keep advancing, adding on to, making changes, making refinements so that it operates as well as possible. We're going to have time for questions in just a few minutes, so we're just make our way through this, then we'll just kind of pause for questions every now and again. What components are required for ACPR? Well, with any good Q-SYS system, first thing you're going to need is a core. This is a video system, so you're going to need some cameras, and it's responding to where a person is speaking in the room, so then you're going to need some microphones. So core, camera, microphones. All the systems start with those three basic ingredients. You then can download the Q-SYS plugin for ACPR right from Q-SYS Designer. It's all part of our Q-SYS VisionSuite plugin. So why do I see a large blocking dark area on the slide titles? I'm not sure. That may be your own camera. I'm
I
not sure.
didn't. No, I noticed
Are you
that
seeing it
too.
too?
Yeah,
Where's it at?
it's right, like it starts at the T on automatic and goes across camera, reset, reset.
Well, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to share again and see if it
Yeah.
resolves itself. Thank you for letting us know that.
We're only wanting to give you half of the titles.
Yes, it's
And you have to work for what the title of each slide is.
let's try this again. Any better?
Eddie Vedder. It's any
Yes.
better, yes.
Excellent. I got a story for you when we're done with this. Um, so each one of these Q-SYS plugins are downloadable within Asset Manager. This is part of the VisionSuite collection of plugins. Part of this is, any Q-SYS plugin that you need is going to use that scripting engine because they're all based on Lewis scripts. So the latest version of ACPR is version 90.0.5.2. How did we move from version 3 to version 90 so quickly? We're just that good. No, the version of VisionSuite corresponds to the firmware version of the SeerVision AI accelerators, the SeerVision servers. So That's why the numbering has changed on those. Every time you download the plugins for ACPR or really any plugin that Q-SYS designs, you'll get a nice help file with it. And with these that require some advanced training or advanced applications, we also include some sample designs. So you'll have sample designs with each of the microphones that we support as part of that download. How many cameras can ACPR support? Well, when we're setting up these automatic camera preset recall plugins within a room, first off, you can use multiple plugins per room, or excuse me, in your design. So you could have different room functions and have a different plugin assigned to those different room functions. Each one of those plugins used in your design can accommodate up to 16 QSC, Q-SYS, NC series cameras in a primary role. An additional 16 can be used as a secondary camera, and all of our cameras can also, the NC series cameras can also utilize auto framing and ACPR together for the best experience possible. So we said adding a secondary camera. So we got 16 primary cameras and we can have 16 secondary cameras. So adding a secondary camera to the location, in this case, I've got our Austin Experience Center brought up here in this slide. We've got two cameras right next to each other, a primary and a secondary on each side of the room. What that's doing is that's allowing us to minimize the visible camera movements to the far end of the call, to the recording, whatever the case may be. By adding that secondary camera, if the primary is occupied, if the primary is currently focused on a participant and its video is being fed to the outside world or recorder, it's the secondary's job then to move into place for a preset that would normally go to the primary. So instead of seeing that camera move around, the far end is just seeing quick cuts and minimized camera movements. In addition to those minimized camera movements, if you don't have a secondary camera, we can also integrate what's called home position masking, where we can fall back to a wide shot of the room or any shot that you designate as your home position and have that hide the camera movements as well. So in this case, we got a primary and a secondary camera. Our primary camera is focused on our person speaking on the left-hand side of the room, where a person starts speaking on the right-hand side of the room. Instead of watching that camera movement happen, the secondary camera moves into place. Once it is in its preset location, it's focused, then your far end just sees a cut switch between those two cameras. Now, what about when, oh, I gotta roll back here. What about when we've got somebody speaking in the room? Wow, this is going the exact wrong way. Don't click, kids. It's not worth it. So we've got somebody speaking from the far end of the call. Well, we don't want to be awkwardly focused on just one person in that case. So if there's a person speaking on the far end of the call, we can move back to that wide shot again. If there's no one speaking in the room, again, we can just move back to that wide shot. That way we're not kind of just focused on one area of the call all the time. It gives a better experience for your in-room as well as far-end participants. Another option that we've added to the ACPR is to utilize the ability to move to that home position if there's audio coming from somebody in a seated position outside of our normal presets. So say you have a gallery area that gets set up in a large boardroom. That gallery area now begins to speak, so we can move to a wide shot in that instance as well. Additionally, because we're looking at both the horizontal and the vertical coordinates that these microphones afford us, we can distinguish between a seated and a standing position. So the person at the front of the room in this case went from their seated to standing position. Horizontally, that's going to be almost identical, but vertically, there will be a difference. So that difference is enough to move to a different preset. In this case, camera at the rear of the room picks up on the person standing at the front of the room. They're now presenting. Maybe they're in front of a whiteboard, interactive display, something along that lines. We support currently intelligent microphones, this by Sennheiser, Audio-Technica Shure, now Yamaha Adesia as well. We support, obviously, our own microphone. We're pretty partial to that one. The Q-SYS NMT1, as well as discrete microphones. What do we mean by discrete microphones? individual microphones placed around a conference area, city council dais, that thing, that are permanently installed and never move positions. That one's really important. When you first open up the ACPR plugin, you'll see a drop-down menu that allows you to configure it for each one of these different intelligent microphone choices as well as discrete mics. This way, you're having a similar experience no matter what microphone you're setting up. So when you set, whether it's the Sennheiser, Team Connect Medium, the Audio-Technica AT&D, the Shure MXA 920, or the Yamaha Adesia RMCG, you will have a similar experience where you're looking at a horizontal and a vertical angle for each one of those mics, regardless of what those mics push out natively for information. So we do the math on the back end so you don't have to. The Q-SYS plugin, in each instance of the Q-SYS plugin, can support up to 10 of those third-party intelligent microphones. How many microphones do you need for ACPR? Do you need more mics for ACPR? Typically, no. Use your microphone setup software, setup and configuration software to determine your microphone needs for that specific space. And at that point, if as long as you're covered by audio, we can get those coordinates from the mics as well. A lot of times, we don't even get coordinates from all the microphones that are in a room. We, focus on a couple mics maybe at the front, things like that, to give us the coordinates, is because we're not processing that, we're not looking at that far end audio experience where we might need those extra mics. We're just looking for that audio data coming in to provide us coordinates of where people are located and where they're speaking from. Again, we're giving each one of those mics a similar layout when you go into the ACPR plugin. So you're pulling down a microphone, you're able to set up about 20 different presets per microphone. Excuse me. And whether you're using the Shure, AT, doesn't matter. You're still going to be looking at a horizontal range of degrees that a person is sitting at and a vertical range of coordinates that a person is sitting at. Excuse me. In addition to getting those microphone coordinates, we can also use zone information from mics such as the Audio-Technica and our own Q-SYS NMT1. With the Q-SYS NMT1, that gives us 4 individual zones around the microphone that can be enabled or disabled. We can support up to 10 of those AT mics, just like the other intelligent microphones. And depending on which core is specified, we can support up to 16 of our NMT1 microphones. So we're very, very capable in any of those instances. When we talk about discrete microphones, everybody loves, well, end users love them anyway, the wireless boundary microphones and the wireless gooseneck microphones, be it AT, Shure, Sennheiser, whoever the manufacturer is. And those mics are great. You don't have any cables going anywhere. They do what they say they're going to do. However, no matter how well we label those microphones, no matter how well we train, no matter how well we try to prepare, they inevitably do not get laid out in the same place at every meeting. That's why we focus on, okay, if you're going to use discrete microphones, let's make sure that they are in an installed location. If they can't be in a dedicated installed location, then you can supplement their usage with a ceiling microphone, one of our the intelligent ceiling microphones by one of our manufacturer partners. That way, you're just getting coordinates from that ceiling microphone while the audio is coming from those dedicated wireless boundary or wireless gooseneck microphones. So you can double up. The audio process is completely separate for your outgoing audio as it is for ACPR. So you can have completely individual audio pathways. Now, where are you going to place those mics? With ceiling microphones, if you use the setup software that the manufacturer provides you, it does a great job of positioning those microphones so that everybody in the room is heard, right? We see exactly where the layout of the mic is going to be. We can set independent zones, etc. However, that is great if we're all just talking to the center of the room, to the center of the table. The room layout that we have on screen right now is kind of one of our typical room layouts, right? Where not exactly opportune for video conferencing. usually most important person in the room is the one who's sitting farthest from the mics and the cameras. So we want to make sure that everybody in the room can be heard effectively, not only on the call, but the coordinates that are provided to ACPR are also as accurate as possible. The people in the front of the room in a video conference, they turn their heads to see, what's on the display because we're speaking towards a display. We're having a conference, and now the back of their heads are facing the mics. I want to, I don't know how many, I can emphasize this anymore, but a mic is a mic is a mic is a mic. Doesn't matter if it's a handheld and you're speaking into a handheld or a headset, you always need to be speaking into that mic. And that same applies for ceiling microphones. If you're not speaking directly into the ceiling microphone, then it's going to get a reflection off of maybe a large format LED screen, large LCD screen, windows, walls, that sort of thing. So we want to make sure that we position those microphones so that we're getting the best coverage that we can for our application. In this case, our application is video conferencing. So all we'd have to do is push those microphones ahead a couple feet in the room. And now the persons at the front of the room, when they turn their heads to speak towards the displays, they're also speaking towards that microphone. Any presenters that are at the front of the room, they're also speaking towards that microphone. Our coverage area has not, diminished at all in that case, just by moving those microphones forward. We can also create exclusion zones if we have areas outside of the room that we want to ignore, hallways, doorways, windows. You know, if we're on, the airport side of a building, doing what we can to create those exclusion zones and eliminate areas where we might be getting audio that we don't necessarily want to have in our meeting. When we're using microphones up at the ceiling, geometry and physics is what geometry and physics is. So we're going to have instances where we're going to have what's called crossover, where a person speaking is being picked up equally by both microphones. To assist with that crossover, we can utilize crossover zones within the Q-SYS plugin. The last four zones on each microphone page within the Q-SYS ACPR plugin is for a crossover zone. So we can look at not only the primary microphone, but we can designate a secondary microphone that may be getting that audio information as well, and use that audio information, doesn't matter which mic it's coming from, to recall the same set of preset coordinates. What happens though when we've got crosstalk? Well, we spoke about having those camera positions that kind of go to a default wide view when there's audio from the other end of a call, when there's silence in the room, when there's audio from a person is speaking from an area outside of the designated coordinates or designated locations in the room, we move to that wide shot. Another instance where we move to that wide shot is when we detect crosstalk. Crosstalk is when we've got multiple people speaking in the room at the same time, so we're not sure who to focus on. So instead of trying to bounce back between camera shots super quick and make the far end of your call feel like they're on a roller coaster, we're just going to move to a wide shot. So we can move to that wide shot, we can detect that crosstalk, detect those instances, and we've got some settings, slow, medium, fast, as well as custom, to how quickly we respond to that crosstalk and how quickly after crosstalk is detected, we go back to our normal camera preset recall. Those are called expert controls. So one of the pages within the plugin allows us to set the time at which the far end needs to be speaking before we move to that wide shot, the time at which there's silence in the room before we move to that wide shot, the time at which crosstalk trigger happens. How quickly is that going to resolve? How loud does that crosstalk have to be in order to happen? Additionally, do we need to maybe tune how quickly ACPR is responding to microphone activity in the room? We do that with our mic detection threshold. That can be used to help with false triggering that might be happening in the room, as well as a couple other settings on here, zone hysteresis, and the ability to load settings from another ACPR plugin. So what zone hysteresis is when we've got audio coming from a person speaking and it's being detected at an angle that is relative to two different presets. And what that's going to do is instead of the LED next to that zone within the plugin going red, it's going to go blue, saying, "Hey, I'm not sure to where to go here. I've got a person speaking. They're at, I'm going to say 137 degrees. They're at 137 degrees, but they kind of go to 138. They kind of go to 139. What we can do here is we can kind of pad that setting globally by a couple degrees at a time to eliminate, again, eliminate that false triggering, eliminate areas where we may be providing similar coordinates for two different speaking positions. And if you've got a system that you're updating to a newer version of ACPR, going from version 3 to one of our newer versions, you can load the settings from that existing ACPR block into your new ACPR block. Or if you're duplicating rooms, it's also a good way to, kind of get some quick starter settings on ACPR. So let's look at some design examples. We don't always need to have ACPR. As much as I love ACPR, it's one of the things that I do every week is I help individuals remotely set up their ACPR and Seer Vision systems. But there are times and places for each technology. So we try to accommodate each one of those times and places. We are looking at a small conference room here, right? Kind of a D-shaped monument table. Maybe it's butted up against the wall. This is less than 15 feet from the person, furthest person in the room to the camera. So this is a perfect application for our NC110 camera. Perfect application for our table mic, the NMT1. So this is going to connect up to a core over the network, and we're going to utilize our automatic framing for this. We don't necessarily need to move from preset to preset to preset. Just by framing the persons as they enter and leave the room, we're able to get that good meeting equity that we're looking for in these smaller spaces. No matter how big the space, they all start off with the same equipment: core, camera, and a microphone. So got to be able to control it, got to be able to see the people in the room, and we got to hear what's going on. So core, camera, and microphone. Probably help to have a display too, so you can see the far end, but I won't be nitpicky on that one. So in this case, our table got a little bit bigger. Table gets a little bit bigger, no big thing. Do I have a core? Yes, I do. I've got my NV32 in core mode. Do I have microphones? Yes, I do. I got two of them now. I've got two NMT1s, and maybe we've turned off the zones for the NMT1s that are facing the displays or facing the center of the table. We don't necessarily need that audio, so we're just keeping the zones of the lobes of the NMT1 active that are facing the seated participants. NC110 camera still works like a champ in this guy. Don't need camera preset recall because it's still a smaller room. Moving into a little bit bigger rooms now, we can see that as those rooms increase in size, the core, pun intended, concepts remain the same. Where we've got Q-SYS core to control it, we've got cameras to see the participants in the room, and we've got microphones to identify where their audio is coming from. In this example, we've got two cameras at the top of the displays, one as a primary, the other as a secondary. That way the persons on the far end of the call are just seeing quick camera cuts. They're not seeing camera movements. The NMT1s are placed at the table. Again, we can turn off the lobes to get rid of audio that's maybe coming from the display area or from the center of the table. And this is a BYOD room, so our laptop is connected right to the NV32 that's acting as an encoder underneath the table. So we've got USB connection and HDMI connection from our UC computer. And then we've also got a couple extra HDMI connections that we can use for other person's computers. Uh, if we're going into a situation where we can't cut into the table, we can't maybe put table mics. Table mics might not be aesthetically pleasing. No problem. We just switch to a ceiling microphone. In this case, we're using the Audio Technica, but it could be the Sennheiser, it could be the Shure MXA920, and now it could also be the Yamaha Adesia microphones. Again, as these rooms progress, as they get larger, look at your core. Do you have enough AEC channels to accommodate the microphones that you're going to need for that room? And once that's been accommodated, core, cameras, microphones. So we've got a Nano in this room being used as the core. We've got two of our NC cameras at the front of the room, one at the side of the room, so that we can catch kind of the little bit closer shots, provide a little bit more meeting equity. So yes, we've got a primary and secondary at the front of the room, but maybe we've got a camera off to the side to catch the persons who are seated a little bit further towards the rear of the room and give them a little bit more equity as well. What about those flex spaces? What about those big combinable rooms? What about multi-purpose rooms? Those sorts of things. Some of these flex spaces that we're designing for could be all the way up to 4 or 5 room combinable systems that change orientation once the room is combined. Is that going to throw a wrench in things? No, actually, ACPR is great for those instances because we can use individual ACPR plugins for each one of the room configurations. So in this case, we've got a Core Nano, and the Core Nano is operating the room. It's acting as a core for all of the rooms that are part of the combinable scenario. We are sharing video, we are sharing audio because we've got some TCC2s up in the ceiling. We've got some ceiling speakers. We've got some cameras, our NC series cameras, both primary and secondary at the displays, as well as a camera at the rear of the room. When these rooms are used individually, they each have their own instance of ACPR, their own ACPR plugin. And so they exist semi-autonomously from each other. They're talking to the same core, but they're isolated. They're not sharing any kind of peripherals. We take down that air wall, we move that movable partition, and what we can do is we can disable the ACPR plugins that were being used for the rooms when they were separated, and now use one plugin for when the rooms are in a combined mode. So that gives us 1, 2, 3 different ACPR instances that we're using with this Q-SYS design. Now all of our cameras, all 6 of our cameras in this case, are part of a larger room system. You can maybe use the UC compute in room A versus room B, mix it up. Doesn't really matter. We try to make things as easy and as accommodating as possible with Q-SYS. Higher ed is a great example of where we're seeing a lot of these ACPR systems as well as SeerVision systems now kind of come to fruition. In a higher ed, you've got a set example of an instructor, a professor. They've got their teaching station. They like to move around the room as well. So we can accommodate that with multiple presets as the instructor moves about the room, or a secondary presenter comes into the room and ACPR could trigger the cameras to go to them. Students or other audience members would like to interact, ask questions, not a problem. We've got cameras facing them as well. So we've got a camera that can handle the audience or the class, as well as a camera that could handle the instructors at the front of the room. I like this example. I'd like it even more if there were multiple cameras here. If we had a primary and secondary camera at each one of these locations, then if we're saving this to a lecture capture system, then the lecture capture system isn't recording those camera movements, it's just recording those quick cuts. And all of this is operated by a Core Nano. So not a whole lot going on there for cores. We're looking at this. We've got 2 AEC channels from these ceiling mics. We got a couple from the wireless mics. So really that AEC channel count is dictating, or I should say informing, our choice of cores. And then beyond that, it's pretty easy. Let's just add some endpoints. Let's add some USB peripherals, etc. The controls for ACPR, because this is Q-SYS, you can take any control from one of our schematic elements, any of our plugins, whether it's a text box, whether it's a button, an LED indicator, a video preview window, and we can move those all onto a user interface, user control interface, UCI. It does not have to be a Q-SYS user control interface. Our systems work amazingly well with Microsoft Teams controllers, Zoom, Google Meet, as well as within web browsers and the iOS application as well. Of course, we want you to put just litter your walls with Q-SYS touchscreens if you can, though. So looking at this from a Microsoft Teams room, We've got a CSS template design that's part of our sample designs that you can download within Q-SYS Designer. And we can add our manual controls for the cameras and buttons to enable ACPR and auto framing. That takes up a lot of real estate on that not so big touch panel. You know, the typical MTR touch panel, Google Meet touch panels between 7 and 10 inches. That real estate gets ate up pretty fast. So if you want to have a preview window on there, that preview window gets smaller and smaller with the more controls you add. By allowing ACPR to do its magic, we can now free up that real estate so that you can have a clearer picture of the either other selections that you have for the room, maybe whether that be thermostat or or video preview, and let ACPR kind of do its thing. Let it manage all the camera switching. You don't need those controls on your touch panel. You can further enhance or refine that image by enabling auto framing. So ACPR moves into position, and now we use auto framing to identify the heads that are in that space and more tightly frame upon them. I should have hit on this earlier, but I wanted to say when you're setting up these presets for ACPR, kind of the best practice is to get between 2 and 4, the width of 2 to 4 people within each shot. And then you can use auto framing to further refine. So if all 4 people aren't sitting in that shot, it gets tighter. As people enter and exit that shot, it automatically widens to accommodate those individuals. We don't want to use just super tight headshots. I mean, we've all gotten used to that because of Zoom and Microsoft Teams, but we're losing a lot of kind of that nonverbal experience. So the nonverbal cues, the body language from other meeting participants in the room, we kind of lose that a little bit when it's just the talking head through the Zoom window. Of course, you can use third-party joystick controllers as well, whether they be by Scarhoy, which has just an excellent, excellent, excellent controller, no bias there, or any of the PTZ controllers that use Visca over IP. We've got plugins for both of those to manage the cameras. Why would you use those? Well, maybe this is going in a university space that gets rented out on the weekends. So the group that's coming in on the weekends, they also maybe reserve a university worker to help them run that meeting. You can give that worker the ability to do, complete custom control of that room by disabling ACPR, disabling the auto framing, and allowing them to use a third-party camera controller. So we talked a little bit about best practices. Let's really talk about best practices. The number one issue that I address on a weekly, multiple times weekly basis with ACPR installs is gain structure. So making sure you're following the best practices for gain structure in AEC is probably the single most important thing next to microphone placement that there is to making a good working system not only sound great, but perform well for ACPR. The best practices for gain structure in AEC is part of our training programs, both part of our regional quick starts as well as online. So if you haven't, take an hour, do the gain structure in AEC class, you won't regret it. Treat acoustic issues in the room. So that kind of goes along with the the gain structure. If you're in a room that has mechanical issues and those mechanical issues are noise coming from an adjacent room, HVAC, etc., treat mechanical issues by mechanical means. The other one is echo. Clap your hands if you're getting a lot of bit of echo back or reverberation in the room. Maybe your room requires some acoustic treatment. If it doesn't sound good over a call, then it also won't perform as well for ACPR. Utilize the mic manufacturer's recommendations. Speak towards the microphones and locate the microphones so that they can be spoken towards. Install cameras to maintain a conversational eye line where possible. Okay, so don't put the cameras as high as you can. Nope. I know that there are restrictions and sometimes we have to mount things where they're not the most opportune, but if we can, arrange your cameras so that they are at a more conversational eye line. Your far end participants will thank you for that, as well as us that are follically challenged will thank you for that. Set expectations through a thorough scope of work and configure those camera presets to focus on multiple people. We talked about utilizing auto framing to further enhance and refine that camera shot. The number, I'll say number three biggest thing that we run into is trying to do too much with too little. Um, the cost of a camera or the cost of a microphone is far outweighed by the cost of sending another technician on site for 2, 3 days to make adjustments that are hard to achieve if we would have, or harder to achieve than if we would have just had that second camera or that additional mic or whatever the case may be. So stick to your guns, folks. And if you're looking at this situation, you're looking at a design, and you're like, you know what, this is going to require two cameras. Really, really stick to those guns. If you need a little backup, just hit up your regional AET, and we will get on a call with you with the customer and kind of run them through why that's important. You can also do an online demonstration of the ACPR and Sear Vision systems. Each one of the microphones, that was a really bad segue. Each one of the microphones will also come with its own kind of best practices. So make sure you read the freaking manual for each one of your microphones. So what requirements? What is ACPR? If I'm doing, kind of explaining this to folks out in the field, do the law of diminishing returns apply to installing too many mics? Good point. So again, go back to the microphone manufacturer's recommendation. Most of those mics cover a 16 to 20 foot radius, and base your microphone configurations on that. Um, what I'm saying with the don't try to do too much with too little, if you're on just the bleeding edge of what that microphone is capable of, say you've got a 40-foot wide by 40 by 40 room, and you slap a TCC2 or an MXA 920 right in the dead center of it, you're going to be missing about 8 feet on the edge of that microphone's pickup pattern. And inevitably, that's exactly those 8 feet that we're missing is exactly where the person who's going to be the most critical of the performance of the room is going to sit. So that's what I'm saying. Don't try to do too much with too little. Oh, the Steve, the camera controller of which I have zero bias is Scarhoy. Dan will do me a favor and type that into the message because it's got one more A than you thought it would, and no H's.
There he goes.
Oh,
He
yeah, it
just
does have an H. No Y.
Richard just dropped the link in there.
There you
Man,
go.
we've got a great group here. They're self-sustaining. I like it. That's one
So
of the cool things about AV is there's a lot of team in there.
So we're going to get going on Sear Vision now. We've got camera presets going from areas that are designated or determined by coordinates being fed by microphones. What happens if I've got a large area in the front of the room that I want to have actively tracked? So acting like there's a camera operator in the room without there being a camera operator in the room. Well, we've got Sear Vision. Look at that. Got a solution for almost everything. Sear Vision uses the camera's field of view to determine, do we need to drive the automation with visual cues? Do we need to track a person within the, excuse me. So in this case, you're seeing good old Nate present from the front of the room. Now this is all being managed by a Sear Vision server. It's looking at Nate's skeletal structure. We're not retaining any biometrics. We're looking at over 20 points of articulation, height, hair color, clothing color, other maybe not so great personal choices that Nate has made. And we're using those to create a profile for Nate as he walks through the room, assign him a value that we're sure that it's a human being. Again, we're not retaining biometrics, we're not doing facial recognition. We're just using math to determine that this is a human being, assigning Nate a number and saying, we're going to track this person. All of that is done based on that same basic concept of core, camera, microphone, but now we're adding in a SeerVision AI accelerator, SeerVision server. The SeerVision server hangs on the network. It's getting all of its information from the network stream of the Q-SYS camera, and it's communicating back to the Q-SYS core. It's using those network streams to drive the camera automation, but we are not processing any video within the SeerVision server. It's acting as if it was a robot at the back of the room with a joystick controller. That's the SeerVision server. It's available in two different flavors. It works with the NC series cameras only, so the NC110, NC1280, and 2060. And it's just like having a remote camera operator on call for every meeting, every class, every event. So here's a second video that kind of illustrates that skeletal structure, kind of informing the AI. So we're looking at basic facial structure, basic skeletal structure, clothing, hair color. We're identifying all those different points, and we're saying this person is 85% human, 95% human, 93% human, and we're assigning them a unique identifier, in this case of 55. And so SeerVision says, all right, I'm 94% certain that this is a human. They are identifier number 55. SeerVision can work on a first in, first out basis. So number 55 was the first in who came into my field of view. I'm going to track number 55. All of that is set up within the SeerVision's GUI, which is just accessed over a web page into into our server. And we've got two different versions of server. Chromium-based servers are best with this. I have had some issues using or trying to use like Firefox for it as well, but it is all built within the server. Components, I'm going to just drive this down until you're sick of me. Core, cameras, and now we can add that SeerVision server on. We've currently got two flavors of the SeerVision server, the SVS1-2U and the not confusing at all name of the SVS4-2U. Each camera that needs to be used as a tracking camera has to have its own instance within a server. So it has to have its own AI pathway within that server, its own AI process. So the SVS1-2U has one of those AI processes. The SVS4-2U has two of those AI processes. There's a little bit of nomenclature that carried over from when this was a broadcast product before the acquisition by Q-SYS. So just remember that any camera that's used for tracking has to have its own AI pathway, has to have its own AI service. And so each one of those cameras will require at least one channel of a SeerVision server. Now, what happens if we get into needing a secondary camera for this, for tracking? What's the secondary's camera role? Why has it got a different name? We've got the network camera that's our presenter track. So that's going to be actively moving around and tracking the presenter across the room. And then we've got now a new camera, the conductor camera. Its job is to hang back, observe the complete area of the presentation space, and tell Q-SYS, is there an additional person in that presentation space? Has our instructor moved from a lectern to a whiteboard position? The same with we're tracking that presenter and we're utilizing AI to track that presenter, but we're using another instance of AI. So in this case, we would need a two-channel server for that conductor camera. So Brandon, you asked, will the individual speaker be assigned the same number if they leave the speaking zone? You retain that number that you've been given by SeerVision, you retain for about 6 seconds. So you can walk out and walk back in within about that 6-second window. If it's beyond that, then it completely forgets you. But while it recognizes who you are and while you've got a number assigned to you, it's learning your movements. It's anticipating your movements so that it can track you more effectively the longer that you're in the camera's field of view. And I'm using jazz hands to demonstrate that.
Hey, Jason, if
Yep,
you could holster those jazz hands for a minute, we've got a
I can.
question here. So, Brandon Gordon says, will the individual
Mm.
speaker be assigned the same number if they leave the speaking zone?
Yep, and that's kind of what I was just talking about with the if you leave the speaking zone, if you leave the camera's field of view for about 6 seconds, it forgets you. Um, you're completed as you're treated as a completely new human being the next time you walk into the camera's field of view.
Thanks for reiterating that and clarifying. Appreciate it.
Which camera do you need though, Dan? Do you need the NC1280 or do you need the NC2060 if you're sitting at the back of the room? I'll
Well,
tell
how
you,
far
Dan.
was the back of the room?
If you were the back of the room, you would suggest the NC1280 if you're about 36 feet to 60 feet from the person that you're focusing on. If you're beyond that, 60 to 92 feet, then kind of your optimal camera would be the NC20 by 60. My easy way to remember it is what's three times the zoom ratio on each of these cameras? That's going to be your optimal shot distance for each of these cameras. So three times 12 for NC 1280 is 36 feet, three times 20 for the NC 2060 is 60 feet. And that kind of gives you your opportune shot for a medium shot. Well, what's considered a medium shot, and why do I care about shots? There's two different ways that we manage presets within Sear Vision. They're actually called containers within Sear Vision. Either a shot, where we're actively tracking a person as they move about the room, or a position container. Position container doesn't track at all. It's just moving to a distinct area of the room and focusing on that. It's got blinders on. It doesn't see anything else. And so when we're setting up our shots, we also determine what kind of a shot it will be. How do we want that person focused on in the room? Do we want a close-up, upper body shot, three-quarter, full body, etc.? We can use these kind of predetermined shots, or we could create our own within Sear Vision. So it works best. Sear Vision AI tracking works best when there's defined presentation area. Lecture halls, training rooms, etc. They're great examples. Additionally, presenter tracking is great for video production and distance learning because it's going to track the person speaking. You have one less person that, one less person that has to be operating the room. You can allow that Sear Vision server to assist in the room operations. And you can also use this in meeting spaces with a presentation area. I'm emphasizing the words presentation area because if your room has seats, within, 4 or 5 feet from the display, and that's all the area that your presenter has to walk, is that really slim spot between the end of the table and the last seated person and the display, that's really not a great example of the ability to have someone tracked effectively. Will it work? Absolutely, it'll work. But your field of view, you're going to get kind of the least benefit from that sort of an application. Where it really shines is those presentation spaces like lecture halls, auditoriums, large training facilities, things like that, where we can really see over a large area or a larger area how well this system tracks a human being. In addition to just being tracked, where a person who is within the Sear Vision camera's field of view, where they move can also trigger different actions through trigger zones. So that we could set that up to maybe do a lighting preset change as a person walks across the room, or a content change. Professor walks into the classroom, they walk up to the lectern. Have the system automatically welcome the students with a maybe a JPEG or a message or an image in an NV32, have it give maybe Wi-Fi instructions, things like that, as the instructor moves into the room, and as he or she moves away from the podium or lectern. Now we can have even different presets be triggered just by that person's movements. So it's like having not only a camera operator with a joystick in the back of the room, but it's also like having an operator with a touch panel pressing buttons as the instructor moves about the room. There are four scenarios. I got to get all four fingers up here. Four scenarios that are currently supported kind of as off-the-shelf scenarios with Sear Vision. Single presenter. I've just got one area at the front of the room that I want to track a presenter. I can do that with one camera and one instance of the Sear Vision server. So an SVS1 plus one of our NC series cameras. Got it. Super easy to configure. In this case, it's just using an NV32 as the core, so nothing crazy is required core-wise for this. What about if I've got maybe a interactive display, whiteboard, chalkboard, those they do still exist, with my system, and I want to have just a still shot of that whiteboard because the content of that whiteboard is more important than whether or not the instructor is moving in front of the whiteboard. So we want to make sure that we're focused on that whiteboard. We can absolutely do that by adding in a second camera for a static view. Now, the second camera that's a static view, it's just being switched by whether or not our presenter moves in or out of a trigger zone. So the camera that's detecting whether they move in or out of a trigger zone is our tracking camera. So we still only need one instance of the Seer Vision server, Seer Vision camera license, NC camera. The second, the static view camera, that is not controlled by any AI at all. It's just a simple switch happening within Q-SYS, so you only need one instance. Now, what if we want to add ACPR? Is ACPR compatible with this? Absolutely, it's compatible, and it's awesome to set up for truly interactive classes. So you're recording a class, sending it to a far end, sending it to a lecture capture system, and your students, your audience participants, city councils, your audience members are talking back and forth to the dais, for example. So your audience members, the gallery, question comes with the gallery. We have presets for the gallery that's triggered through ACPR. The city council or dais responds to that question. ACPR then says, "Hey, Seer Vision, do your thing. You're now going to be, we're now going to switch to you so you can track the presenter at the front of the room. And as we have questions go back and forth, that camera control is going to go back and forth between Seer Vision and ACPR. For these situations, we still only have one tracking camera. So that's one tracking camera, one instance of Seer Vision server licenses, and one SVS1 Seer Vision server added to this existing ACPR system. And the ACPR system is two cameras. That static camera is not part of this. So you got two cameras that are part of the ACPR, another one that is acting as a static camera to capture that whiteboard shot, and the fourth camera is for your presenter tracking. Now, our current offering when it comes to having multiple people on stage, on a presentation area, things like that, is we need a little help. If our if our tracking camera is focused in on a presenter and they're moved to one side of the stage, they're over here, and presenter number two comes in, our tracking camera is already focused in on this guy. It totally misses presenter number two coming in. So when two comes in, we need to know when he's there. So we use a conductor camera to look at the total area of coverage. Say, presenter one, you're currently being tracked, but I see somebody else over here. So what do we need to do? Currently, we can just move to a wide shot. That way, we're capturing both presenters within the camera's field of view, sending that to the far end. But we needed that conductor camera to assist us with that. So we've got two cameras now used for tracking. One is a conductor, one is a tracking camera. Each one of those cameras requires an instance of AI, so we'll require a channel and a license for the Seer Vision server. Since we have two cameras that require licenses and servers, now we bump up to that SVS4-2U. So some real quick best practices before we start answering any additional questions. Make sure your presentation area, the area that the person is to be tracked, is adequate. It's not a super narrow space in front of the end of the table, but we have a designated presentation area. Are seated participants going to interfere with that area? We can get around that with positioning of the conductor cameras. We can get around that with just moving seats back in the rear of the room. A good practice is to position that tracking camera so that it is at the center of the tracking area. Because if we're coming in from a side, then your person kind of gets skewed visually as they move from one side to another. There's that parallax that happens. So best practice is I'm at the center of that tracking position, and now I'm naturally being the view of, say, a person that's sitting in the rear of the room or the far end. Their view is naturally reflected by what the camera's doing. Create some exclusion zones. We could create exclusion zones to ignore doorways, displays, etc. If a person who's created, if you create an exclusion zone around a display, for example, any person that's detected within that display, as long as they are completely within that exclusion zone, they will be ignored. So your presenter, who's outside of that exclusion zone, as well as within the exclusion zone, they will be accommodated. We won't ignore them because they have features that extend beyond that exclusion zone. For larger tracking areas, multiple presenters, divisible areas, divisible rooms, etc., that's where we're going to employ that conductor camera. We're going to maybe use static cameras for whiteboard areas, interactive displays, etc. And one really quick but very important note, the Seer Vision Accelerator is a server-grade appliance. So it's a little larger and it's a little louder, and it's going to produce a little bit of heat. So you're going to want to have that in a server closet that's temperature controlled if possible. This isn't something that's going to go into a credenza and bake all day. Um, this is a server grade appliance, so we need to kind of treat it as a server grade appliance. With that being said, the good thing is it just needs a network connection back to the Q-SYS QLAN network with the cameras with the core on it. So as long as you've got a network connection, it could be on the other end of a building. Doesn't matter as long as it's being accommodated and you're realizing that, yeah, this is a server grade piece of gear. So we want you to engage us during the quoting process. We want you to engage us during that commissioning process as well. We've got commissioning trainings both online as well as level 2 commissioning training that happens in person. Really engage your sales rep. If you've got a project where you think that this is going to be applicable, engage your sales rep, get us going as early as you can on the system design assistance. And then once the system is out there and being installed, we can assist with that commissioning as well. There's a service that we can provide as well as the trainings that are available online. All right, Dan, should we open it up to any additional questions? Dan had to leave. All right. So, Jeff, you asked, can the MXA 910 be used with ACPR? Absolutely. However, the MXA 910 does not provide coordinates, so we need to utilize each one of the lobes as kind of a discrete mic coming off of that MXA 910. With the MXA 910, though the lobes do move a little bit to as it's focusing on a person, so you need to do a little extra planning as far as expanding that zone that the camera is going to focus on. So say you've got an MXA 910 lobe at the front of the room, it's going to track a speaker, it's going to track a person speaking as they move within that lobe and then a little bit outside of it. So just make sure that your preset for that area is going to accommodate how that lobe is going to move as well. Ricardo, with ACPR, how reliable is it to set up camera switching for seated and standing positions in the same location? Any tips to ensure more reliable shots? Well, again, that's going to be utilizing your vertical as well as your horizontal. Your horizontal angles, maybe you've got a range of 25 to 35 degrees. And your horizontal angles, well, 0 is typically the ceiling and 90 is typically the floor. So when we're adjusting for that, just give yourself a gap of a couple degrees between a seated position and a standing position, because sometimes people decide they're going to sit more upright during a meeting, or you don't have the same person seated in that position all the time. Maybe you've got some shorter and some taller people that vary. So that's that vertical positioning and creating that gap between where your tallest person is going to be seated as well as where they're going to stand. That's what is important, and that's where we're going to create those ACPR reliability. That was really bad grammar. I apologize for that. Assuming simultaneous presentations, comes from Steve. Assuming simultaneous presentations are not occurring in classrooms, how many rooms can a single Seer Vision computer serve? Well, a single Seer Vision server can serve, it is kind of a one-to-one ratio. Um, could you get a little more inventive programmatically for that? Yeah, absolutely. But the the orange juice might not be worth the squeeze. So, you know, you could programmatically make those changes, make those additions, change room configurations, things like that. But that might be another instance where um, the effort and the number of programming hours would outweigh the price of just an additional server. Are they cheap? No. This is a server grade appliance. This is, uh, you know, the top of the heap as far as we're concerned. This is the pinnacle of AI camera tracking. So it is intended for those systems that kind of aren't just those quick and dirty kind of classroom systems, but are here's a presentation space that we're going to bring folks into and rent out. We're going to bring clients into, etc. Um, so yeah, please try to use a single Seer Vision server per room that it applies to. Any other questions? We got a couple minutes left here. I'm gonna just go ahead and stop the share. Not that I don't love sharing with you folks, but how many people do we still have on the call here? We got about 34 people still on the call. Got a couple minutes left for questions. Bueller? Bueller? Anybody? Oh, okay, here we go. Here's some more. Brian asks, can you clarify the advantage of using ceiling mics for positional info only and the mics, like table mics themselves for audio? Well, say you've got a console dais or something like that where, well, actually, I'm going to rewind that a little bit. I'm going to tell you an exact practical example that I worked on. I was working on a boardroom for a company that they wanted everybody to have gooseneck mics. The gooseneck mics were all wireless. They were all Shure MXWs. Awesome mics. I've been using them for years. Love the living daylights out of them. However, uh, the no matter how well we labeled the microphones, no matter how well we color coded them, how many times we went over the room layout with the admins, gave them maps with how the microphones were going to lay out, inevitably a mic would move, and now your ACPR is effectively broken because that mic is no longer in the right position. So to rectify this, we installed a Sennheiser TCC2 up in the ceiling so that the coordinates from the people speaking around the room are always consistent. The audio from the TCC2, we mixed in a little bit to cover in case somebody, forgot to unmute their mic or something like that. But we wouldn't even necessarily need the audio from the TCC2. The customers really liked the goosenecks, so just the gooseneck audio is going out to the far end of the call, and just the TCC2 then is used for those microphone coordinates. I hope that answered your question, Brian. And Brandon, is there any benefit for organizations to be able to train Seer Vision to build a profile for more active speakers at our organizations? That could be retained from meeting to meeting. That's a really good example, Brandon. Um, there's how do I put this? That might get into biometric information that is a privacy concern. And so right now we don't have the ability to enable that. But that is something like Zoom and Microsoft Teams are both bringing in people's personal information that they provide to Office 365, that they provide to Zoom. They opt in for these services. So if there's more of an opt-in on those services, we might see that make its way into these intelligent video applications. What about the MXA 910 or excuse me, 710 or MXA 902? The MXA 710 would be treated again as discrete microphones for each one of the lobes coming off the side of that mic. Same with the 310. MXA 902, 902. I'm going to have to look at the 902. There's going to be some interesting stuff off of that 902. I haven't personally used the 902, so I'm not sure of the positional information that it may provide, or if it's just lobe information. If it's just lobe information, then just like the 910 and 710 and 310, then we just treat that as discrete mics. And Ricardo, thank you for joining the meeting. I really appreciate that. Uh, and yes, you will have access to the presentation and recording. You'll get that usually about 3 days. It takes Zoom to turn that around. All right. Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to attend this today. We hope we answered your questions in a timely and somewhat intelligent manner. Uh, Again, hit up your Q-SYS area manager, your sales rep, to assist with these designs. They've got an AET and a technical resource that can assist you with the designs as well as getting these systems commissioned. Thank you again. We hope you guys have a great day and watch for that recording to come through your email. Thanks.